Welcome to the Physician Wealth Med podcast. It's wealth medicine for doctors. If you're a doctor and you have no time, it looks like you found us just in time. This podcast is for all doctors who would like to work on their personal wealth, but do not have traditional hours to do so because they have no time. We're here to jump into topics that will help you address your wealth both inside and outside of your practice so that you can live the life of significance you're dreaming of. You'll hear from your peers, you'll hear from industry professionals, and your host and wealth advisor, me, Kevin Sullivan. This is your time. Now let's get started with today's podcast. Welcome to another edition of the Physician Wealth Med podcast. We are so excited here today to have Dr. Tom Davis with us, and we're going to talk to you about how you can protect your income. The whole mission of this podcast is to help you build wealth inside and outside of your practice so that you can live the life that you're looking to live and the significance that you would like to provide for your family and your practice. And we're so grateful to have Dr. Tom Davis with us here today. We're going to talk about how you can protect your income. And that's one of the biggest things that you can do as a doctor. So at this point, I'd just like to introduce you to Dr. Tom Davis. Tell us about yourself and what you've done to get you to this point and what you're doing right now.
Well, Kevin, I'm a board-certified family physician, and back in 1995, my partners and I signed the very first total risk Medicare Advantage-like contract ever offered in the United States. We were just a small single specialty family practice group on the outskirts of St. Louis. Nobody else wanted to take financial responsibility for their care decisions, so that contract kind of fell on our desk. And my partners and I signed it. We had no idea what we were doing. We basically jumped in the deep end without knowing how to swim. And about 18 years later, we sold the health system that we created for more money than a family physician should ever have. And since that time, I've been doing business consulting. I got into the telemedicine game long before COVID, and so I do consulting in that field too. And I do investing, and I take sweat equity positions in startups. And it's a rollicking good time. That's all I can tell you.
Oh, that's excellent. No, thank you for this. And thank you for agreeing to take time out of your busy schedule to join us today for this podcast. Tell us about what disability income is all about and why physicians should pay extremely close attention to this.
Well, I'm going to tell you a story. And that story happened almost exactly 15 years ago today. I was rounding with my partners in the hospital and walking back to my car to drive to my clinic when I was hit with acute onset of vertigo. And it wasn't as bad as it was going to get, but it was bad. And Kevin, I did not realize that on that day, my career in face-to-face medicine was over. Now, it took about 6 years for me to finally deal with that, but that was the day that it ended. I was 48 years old. It's at the peak of my game, the peak of our earnings, when we were rocking and rolling every day. And boom, it was just all gone. What I had was vestibular neuritis with secondary vestibular migraine and progressive hearing loss. And over the course of the next 6 years, it really burned my hearing. And it wasn't until they released Emgality that I was able to control my vestibular migraines. But the chronic dizziness is and has been always there. It's absolutely miserable. And if I had not had the foresight to purchase my own OC disability insurance, the bio that we talked about at the beginning of this podcast would sound very differently. So during our discussion today, I really want to hammer home 3 points, 3 points to your listeners, and then a big picture. And the first point is that your risk as a physician of becoming disabled from your ability to practice your profession is an order of magnitude higher than your risk of dying. So in preparation for this, I ChatGPT'd and I did some research. One of my clients is the Social Security Administration, so I tried to get some data from them. And what I came up with is that a male physician, all specialties, 30 to 65, has about 2.5 risk in 1,000 of dying in any given year based on 2022 data. So 2.5 in 1,000, your chances of dying. your chances of becoming disabled from practicing medicine is 2.5%. So that's an order of magnitude higher. And I didn't believe that number, but boy, it checks out. Good folks at my disability company checked that out. And it's based on their experience too. So you do your own research. You can quibble a little bit with the numbers. But the bottom line is your risk of becoming disabled and not being able to earn income doing what you are doing now is basically an order of magnitude greater than your risk of dying. We're all walking around with life insurance. How many of us are walking around with our own disability insurance? My experience is telling me not many. That does not make sense. ONOC first, then life insurance. That's the first thing. The second thing is that if you're employed, your disability insurance sucks. Hands down. I don't even have to look at it because I've made this kind of a hobby of mine, and I always ask clients and doctors I work with and whatnot about what their disability looks like. It sucks. It's hard to qualify. It doesn't give you very much, and it is offset by anything that you might claim on Social Security. It's just terrible. If I had to rely on the disability insurance that we had as a company or that I subsequently had as an employee, I never would have qualified because it's not ONOC coverage. It's your ability to do anything based on your age and education. And that includes stuff like I could be a plumber or I could be an electrician, even though I couldn't listen and discern abnormal heartbeats or auscultate lungs. So your employee disability sucks. Do not rely on it. Social Security is great. It's a great net, but it's not much. And again, it's hard to qualify for it. And it certainly won't come anywhere near giving you the protection that you need. You need to buy your own disability insurance, hands down. And there's plenty of great folks out there. I don't sell this. I don't have any financial interest in doing this. I don't get any kickbacks or commissions. I'm just telling you as a physician who's been through this, my mission is to pay that forward. So my good fortune is your good fortune. Buy your own disability. The third thing is when you do buy it, make sure that you pay for it with dollars after taxes, not before. Because I paid for mine after taxes, my benefits are not taxable. That's the rules. You pay for it before tax, you try to deduct it, then your benefits, you have to pay taxes on them. So pay for it with after-tax dollars. And it should be the very first thing that you buy for yourself the moment that you can afford it. So those are the three things. You need it, disability insurance. You got to buy your own disability insurance, and you got to pay for it with after-tax dollars. And to wrap this up in kind of a big picture, in order to become successful, you have to take risks. Now, individual risks can be great or they can be small, but you need, in order to be successful in the long term, you need to balance off those risks. You can't be successful with that strategy unless you have a firm foundation, unless you have played defense at first to make sure you have your fortress of solitude there, your backstop of assets and income that you know is going to be there if everything else goes away. If your ability to practice medicine goes away, if you get removed from Medicare, if all that goes away, you need to know that you still have the assets and your income to support your lifestyle. Now, the big tactic there is to make sure that you live a modest lifestyle, and you certainly don't do it leveraged by debt. But the other half is to protect your income. You can't use any of the strategies that Kevin talks about at all until you know that your downside is protected. And that absolutely means buying your own ONOC disability insurance. So that's the big picture. You need it. Yeah, you have to get it yourself. You should buy it with after-tax dollars. And it has to be part of your plan to play defense first, and then you can take your risks and build wealth. Right now, I am giving you this little dissertation down on the Florida Keys, where I work half the year. I work the other half in Alaska with my beautiful wife on our venture travel van. It's a wonderful life. None of that would have happened if I hadn't had my disability and it hadn't given me the opportunity to take some risks and get where I am. You can live whatever life you want. You just have to be discerning, and you have to take action. Do that from a place of strength.
I love that. Do it from a place of strength. Now you unpacked a lot. This is amazing. Well, let's just break this down. I agree wholeheartedly with what you said about do it first. Cover the risk first because you never know what's going to happen. If you're a surgeon and something happens to your hands, or if it's just maybe even just plain out burnout, that's happening to you in your profession. Maybe it's just the stress is getting to you or you can't do the things that you could. We used to call it a living death because you're not dead. You're walking around with a living death with no income and no ability to make money. And this is why this type of coverage is so important. So I really appreciate you addressing this. And you're hearing this from one of your peers. One of the goals of the podcast is always to interview doctors about different topics. And this is a beautiful way that you can hear from one of your peers to say, here, do this, and here's why. Let's break it down a little bit. Tell us why the own occupation is such better coverage than just a standard run of the mill. Could you expound on that?
Well, because as you work, you become very good at doing what it is you do. But as we both know, everybody who's listening knows, medicine is very broad in its spectrum and it has a lot of meanings. I could have done something else, but I would have earned a lot less revenue. I still would have been miserable because it didn't feel well. And I wouldn't be as good at it, and my training wouldn't have pointed me towards that. So the own protects you by ensuring the income stream that you're the best at. And when you buy it, nobody is going to insure you for 100% of your income stream. You don't need 100% of your income stream. Nobody's going to write that. My insurance was for 40% of my income stream. Remember, it was after taxes. So, it's basically worth 50% more than what it is because I would have had to earn 50% more in order to get the same amount of money. It was fine. It was more than adequate because your expenses for everything except healthcare go down once you're in a disability situation. So you're fine. So you don't need 100% protection, but you do need protection for what it is that you do best.
So what do you think doctors should do right now as they start to think about this subject for their own selves and for their own practice, their own families? Maybe there's a doctor listening right now that's having this aha moment. What do you tell them at this point?
Well, drive really, really carefully, very defensively, until you get a hold of whatever agent that you're comfortable with,
right?
And ask them about what they have on the hook for you for ONOC disability insurance. It'll vary based on your age and your carrier, and they change the rules all the time. I bought mine the moment I was out of residency, the moment I had money to do it. That was one of the very first things I spent it on, and consequently, I am probably going to quadruple my investment back on the premium dollars that I paid. But it was an expense and it required some sacrifice. But boy, I'm glad I did it.
Yes. Doing it proactively. I mean, the old saying, you can't put insurance on a burning building. You got to do it beforehand. And that's the pause for a lot of people. They think, okay, can it happen to me? Will it happen to me? But then what if it happens to you? And versus even if it happens to you, at least you've got some coverage and you've taken care of that situation. It's huge. One of the things you touched on is using after-tax dollars, which is super important when you start thinking about this, because it's like the opposite. If you use after-tax dollars, your benefits are tax-free. If you use pre-tax dollars, then it's going to be taxable on the other end. Give us a couple of stories maybe of someone that should have had this but didn't.
Well, I had a number of peers, including a close partner, who had a similar condition to me and did not. He was in a different financial circumstance and did not have the disability insurance, and he had to work through it. And it was miserable for him watching what he had to do as he felt bad. And as you know, we physicians, most of us will drop dead before we tell you that we're ready to stop working. So he just put his head down. But in retrospect, it cost him part of his life. And it's miserable. You should absolutely have it. And when COVID hit, the tide went out, and you could really tell who wasn't wearing any swimming suits. I was one of very few of my partners that had ONOC coverage, And I was fortunate to have evicted myself from the healthcare biz 2 years before COVID hit, but I was still in contact with my former partners, and a number of them were sick over the long term, and they had no disability coverage at all, simply because their employee disability uh, wasn't prepared to cover anything along with COVID. And as you know, if an insurance company can weasel out of anything, they will. And I know because I used to own an insurance company. So you have to make sure that you know what you're insuring. And then once you do, you pay for what it costs, Kevin. It's tempted to use pre-tax dollars to do that, but the discount's not really that much when you think about the benefits going to be if you have to claim. And you buy insurance like you're going to die tomorrow, and you save like you're going to live forever. And that goes to disability insurance too.
And if you don't have your own occupation, which can be very hard to find sometimes, depending on the profession that you're in, but when you have the own occupation, that really laser beams the focus on that type of disability coverage. Because if you just have the standard definition, like you said, as long as you can be gainfully employed doing anything else, it will not pay out. So it's very important to have that own occupation coverage. Let's talk about partners. You had talked about staying in touch with some of your partners, but what about partnerships for a disability income buyout? So now maybe you're in a 2-3-way partnership with your practice, and one of your partners has this event happen, and now it's dragging down the practice. What do you do then?
Well, if you have a practice, you absolutely, and you're in that situation, you absolutely have to have key man insurance, or you have to have it structured so that an event like that doesn't damage the practice's ability to continue going forward. In between the onset of my dizziness and the time that I had to withdraw from practice, we had a sales event. So we sold our health system. It wasn't because of my disability, trust me, but so that saved the triggering of a key man insurance claim for our practice. And our occupation, our operational documents balanced some short-term expense versus long-term expense when somebody had to withdraw. But if you're in a partnership, you absolutely have to have some sort of key man protection. Otherwise, somebody could head south and then make a claim on their partnership, either to buy out or whatnot. They need that money right away. If it's structured so that you have to pony up the dough, you're going to go to a bank and you're going to get extremely unfavorable terms. The bank people are many things. Compassionate is not one of them. And so you have to either structure your operating agreement and or fill in the gaps with some key man insurance. And that, if you're in a partnership and it doesn't have that, you have to address that right now. All it takes is one uninsured motorist crossing the yellow line, and your world will change forever.
Absolutely. And it's something that you should literally almost stop what you're doing and get it done. But we were just watching, just on a side note, one of those Hell's Kitchen shows, when you have that chef come in and he closes. You've all seen them, right? They come in and they close down a restaurant for a little bit to do a remake over. And it's like, it was that important. Shut the door. Maybe it's not that important for you as a doctor. Maybe you can't do that, obviously. But it's one of those things that's got such extreme importance that you should probably consider this, have a meeting as soon as possible to discuss this type of thing for your company, for your own selves, for your own family. Because if something happens, you know that at least you were in the driver's seat. You're not coming at it from a point of weakness, like you were saying, point of strength, which is very important. What else would you have to add to this?
Well, when you call your insurance agent and you're looking for this, if you can't get ONOC, just ask them for the tightest possible coverage. And you really want to do it within your financial means, but it's an issue of importance. And if that means you have to cut back on your life insurance coverage, well, there's a decision there to be made. Again, you're an order of magnitude more likely to be disabled than die. So keep that in mind as you balance the risks that you're trying to protect yourself against. At the same time, make sure that the level of coverage that you have is adequate for your needs. Most of them will do 40% of an average of your last few years of income. That may have changed in the past few years since COVID. I haven't checked it, but that was what it was before COVID. Just make sure that you are buying the coverage that you need. Again, you want to buy this like you're going to get disabled the next day. My other recommendation for this is to have a comprehensive examination, even if they don't require it for underwriting. You get one yourself, and that includes a vision and a hearing test for you to compare any changes against. One of the things that saved me is that I went in and got a hearing test because I had an external ear problem, and my colleague, who also happened to it was an ENT, also said, "Well, we have to do this; it's standard." And so, okay, so I did it, and it was the best money I ever spent because about 5 years later, they did a comparison test, and boom, the change was really profound and absolutely replicable. So there was no question of me malingering or having any kind of subtle change or a pre-existing change that they could weasel their way out of. I had sufficient hearing loss to qualify for ONOC coverage, and they gave it to me, no questions asked. So if you're looking to do this, I would do the same. I would get a comprehensive physical, including sensory, hearing, and sight, just to make sure it's there on the record. So if there is an acute change for whatever reason, you have a comparative, it'll save you a lot of trouble.
Absolutely. Setting a baseline. That is so important. And it's also good for checking in on your own health. How many times do we put that off for the sake of someone else or serving someone else? So it's very important to do that. This has been a great discussion. I know it's very poignant to the point, but I think you get the point from what we've been talking about here today about disability income coverage. One of the most important coverages that you can obtain for yourself, for your family, and for your practice. Any closing remarks that you would like to just deliver here, Tom, on this one?
So your employer doesn't care about you at all. They will bring a date to your funeral. They do not care about you at all, and they're not protecting you at all. So you have to take action yourself. There is nothing more sedating than a regular paycheck. Don't let it put you to sleep to the real risks that you personally and your family are facing.
I can't close it out any better than that. I just want to thank you so much for taking time here today to discuss this. I look forward to having you back on another podcast. We've got another topic that we'd like to bring to you doctors today. But for today, thank you so much for listening to how you can protect your income using disability income insurance. And thank you, Dr. Davis, for helping us out here today.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you. That's our podcast for today. And remember, if you're not working on your personal wealth, who is? Please share this podcast with your friends and colleagues, and make sure you subscribe, like, and share. Any questions about what you heard today, please send an email to kdsullivan@lpl.com. Physician Wealth Meds, wealth medicine for doctors.